There was a man who sat in silence every morning for 27 days. Same time, same place. No phone, no affirmation playlist, no visual boards. He just stared into nothing and smiled. His friends thought he'd lost his edge. His mentors worried he was falling behind. But on the 28th day, without reaching out, without trying, without launching anything, 3 opportunities he had dreamed of for years arrived in his inbox. Random, unexplainable, almost too easy. But was it random? See, what no one saw was that during those 27 days, this man wasn't doing nothing. He was dismantling the very frequency that had blocked his flow for years. He was detaching from the doing identity, the one that believed action equals worth, that more effort equals a faster result. He wasn't performing for the universe anymore. He was finally listening. Because here's the truth. No one dares to tell you. The quantum field isn't responding to what you're doing. It's responding to something far more subtle and far more powerful. And most people miss it entirely. That's why they burn out. That's why they repeat timelines. That's why they do all the right steps, but still feel disconnected, unfulfilled, unseen by the universe. They're fluent in the language of action, but the field speaks only frequency. And here's the twist. It's not just any frequency. It's the signal of who you are when no one is watching. When you're not trying to manifest, when you're not scripting, when you're not looking for signs. That's the moment when the universe actually listens. In quantum physics, this is not woo-woo. This is coherence. Your body is a transmitter. Your thoughts are electric. Your heart is magnetic. Together, they form a signature, a vibrational ID that constantly broadcasts a field. Not your wishes, not your words, your state. So, here's the unsettling part. You might be doing everything right while unconsciously broadcasting it's not working. You might be scripting your dream life with precision while radiating the frequency of desperation. You might be visualizing luxury while your nervous system is still wired to survival. And that's the invisible contradiction that keeps timeline from collapsing. This isn't about blame. It's about precision awareness. Because once you understand what the field actually hears, you stop wasting energy trying to convince it with effort. You start speaking in the only language it understands. Embodiment. This man who sat in silence, he wasn't lazy. He was recalibrating. He was remembering what most of us forget in the noise of trying to make life happen. You are not here to earn alignment. You are here to return to it. And that return cannot be faked. It can only be felt. The irony is most people are manifesting with the language the field doesn't understand. They're using words, strategies, hustle, rituals. But the field isn't logical. It's vibrational. It doesn't decode what you do. It decodes the energy you're doing it from. So, let me ask you, if you stopped all external effort today, would your energy still be magnetic enough to pull your future toward you? This is the invisible truth we'll unravel in this video. Because it's not about doing nothing. It's about becoming someone who no longer vibrates from lack, who no longer performs for manifestation, who no longer asks the field to deliver, but becomes a version of self that the field cannot ignore. By the end of this journey, you'll no longer guess why certain things aren't showing up. You'll know exactly what signal you've been sending and how to shift it from static into symphony. But to do that, we have to go deeper. In the next part, we'll reveal the reason why even well-meaning spiritual people fail to collapse timelines. You'll learn the quantum miscommunication that happens between your intentions and your field and how to realign without effort. But with emotional congruence, because the field is already listening, just not to what you thought. And once you hear what it hears, everything starts to shift. You probably felt it before. That strange moment where everything outside seems perfect. You're doing the right things. You're focused, organized, and even optimistic. But internally, something doesn't feel right. There's a tension beneath the surface. A quiet resistance, almost like your body isn't convinced. That's the moment the quantum field truly tunes in. Not to what you said, not to what you planned, but to what you transmitted unconsciously, viscerally, energetically. This is where everything begins to make sense or fall apart. Because most people think the universe is like a parent, rewarding effort, obedience, discipline. But the quantum field is not parental. It's not moral. It's mathematical. It calculates coherence. It reflects resonance. That responds to the signal, not the strategy. And that signal is always now. In neuroscience and quantum biology, this is known as state-dependent encoding. Your body literally stores memories and expectations based on how you've emotionally repeated certain frequencies. That means even if you're visualizing abundance, if you're emotionally rehearsing scarcity, the field will echo scarcity back. Not to punish you, to mirror you. Let's simplify it. Imagine you walk into a room with a tuning fork, vibrating at 432 hertz. If there's another tuning fork tuned to the same frequency, even across the room, it will start to vibrate, too. No touch, no force, just resonance. That's exactly what happens with manifestation. The field doesn't grant wishes. It responds to coherence. When your intention, emotion, and embodiment match, you become a broadcast tower, and everything aligned with that frequency starts to move toward you. Not because you're asking, but because you're vibrating. But here's the paradox. The moment you start trying to be in a high frequency, you've already lost it, because trying is resistance, wanting is absence, performing is insecurity, and the field picks that up instantly. This is why so many people plateau. They work so hard to manifest in the head, but their body is still carrying frequencies of fear, separation, and lack. Their words say one thing, but their field, that invisible electromagnetic broadcast around their body, tells another story entirely. Let's make this tangible. You write in your journal every morning, "I am abundant, I am aligned," but inside you feel tight in your chest. You're watching the clock. You're waiting for something to prove it's working. That tension, that's your real signal. That's what the field hears. Because while the conscious mind speaks words, the subconscious, which drives 95% of your signal, speaks only emotion, and emotion is magnetic. Joe Dispenza often says, elevated emotion married to clear intention is the formula for creation. But most people only practice the intention. They skip the emotional rehearsal. They declare desires while emotionally vibrating the opposite. That's like dialing the right number but whispering into the wrong phone. Now, here's where it gets quantum. The field does not understand future tense. There is no I will in the language of energy. The field reflects the now state. So, if you're always in a state of becoming, you never arrive. If you're always reaching, you're always broadcasting, it's not here yet, and so it stays away, perfectly obeying the signal. But there's more. Many people unconsciously use manifestation as a performance for safety. They don't believe they're worthy without achieving. So, they chase results to feel okay, not realizing that very chase radiates lack. That's the trap. The quantum field doesn't respond to your effort. It responds to your energetic posture. And if your posture is built on trying, grasping, or earning, you push it further away. So what's the solution? Shift from performer to broadcaster. Stop proving. Start transmitting. Stop acting as if. Start embodying as is. Because the most powerful manifester is not the one who knows the most tools, but the one who needs the fewest. Why? Because their frequency speaks louder than their actions. Their coherence collapses timelines, and the universe can't help but respond. In the next part, we'll explore what identity has to do with all of this. You'll see how your self-concept, the emotional blueprint you carry, is actually the code the field responds the most, and will begin to gently dissolve the identity that keeps broadcasting struggle, even when your intentions are pure. Because once you change the signal, the field has no choice but to echo it. There's a question most people never stop to ask. Who are you before you start manifesting? Not what you want, not what you're visualizing, but who you've unconsciously decided you are. That identity, subtle, often invisible, is the source code the quantum field responds to. Not your dreams, not your affirmations, but the energetic assumption of self you carry into every room, every ritual, every breath. This is where manifestation becomes less about magic and more about energetic architecture. Because your frequency isn't built in your vision board sessions. It's built in your nervous system, in the stories you repeat, in the emotional cycles you rehearse, in the way you expect life to respond to you even before it does. That's what we call your vibrational identity, and it's more powerful than any technique. Let me show you how this works. You can wake up at 5 a.m., light candles, meditate for 45 minutes, and repeat I am abundant 108 times. But if your body still carries the identity of someone who was rejected, who had to hustle for love, who never felt safe being seen, your signal will be coded with contraction, not coherence. You'll be doing everything from the identity of someone still trying to become, not someone who already is. This is the silent saboteur of manifestation, an identity wired for effort trying to speak the language of ease. And the field which only hears vibration can't translate that contradiction. It reflects your being, not your doing. So, what forms this identity? From a quantum perspective, identity is not just psychological, it's vibrational. Every thought you think, especially when paired with elevated or repeated emotion, wires a neurochemical loop. Over time, that loop becomes familiar in your brain, ever efficient, defaults to the known. This creates what Dispenza calls a familiar past, a state where your future is just your past repeated unconsciously. But identity isn't just in the mind, it's in the body. It's somatic. It lives in the breath, in the posture, in the tiny muscle contractions that happen when someone says your name. Your body remembers who you've been. And if you don't interrupt that loop, you end up manifesting not what you desire, but what you are used to being. This is why high vibration practices sometimes stop working. Not because they're flawed, but because they're being done from an old identity. It's like trying to install new software on a device that still runs the old operating system. The signal glitches. The system doesn't accept the command. So, how do we change that? First, you have to catch the moment you slip back into the old self. The one who doubts, who forces, who scans for signs instead of radiating certainty. Most people aren't aware this shift happens. It's subtle. A sigh, a shrinking, a hesitation. These micro-expressions are signals, clues that you re-enter an identity that the field can no longer support. Because here's the paradox. Your new timeline can't attach to your old self, and the quantum field knows that. That's why it resists delivering new outcomes to those still embodying expired identities. It's not punishment, it's preservation. The field protects coherence. So what's the solution? You don't change identity by forcing new beliefs. You become someone new by embodying a new frequency consistently until it's no longer an act. This isn't faking. This is vibrational rehearsal. You act as if until it becomes assist. Start small. Sit in stillness, not to track, but to observe. Feel the version of you who no longer chases. Breathe with them. Walk like them. Ask, what would I no longer do if I truly believed I already was who I say I am? And then do less of that. Your new identity is not a costume. It's not a vibe. It's not a Pinterest board. It's a frequency. And when your thoughts, emotions, and actions align with that frequency, you stop asking for confirmation. You become confirmation. You stop seeking the sign. You are the sign. In the next part, we'll introduce a simple but profound practice that rewires this identity gently and effectively. A daily ritual that doesn't require hours, props, or performance, just presence. You'll learn how to transmit a clean signal from the core of your being. Because the quantum field doesn't need you to convince it. It needs you to become coherent enough that it has no choice but to reflect what you already are. And when that shift happens, everything begins to organize around you naturally, effortlessly, instantly. There's a moment, quiet, and almost imperceptible when the shift begins. You're no longer doing the ritual to get something. You're not saying the affirmation to prove you believe. You're simply being, not acting as if, just allowing yourself to embody what's already available in the field. That's the sweet spot where the quantum field responds before you even realize you've changed, and it doesn't take hours. It doesn't require a script. It starts with one transmission, clean, honest, and emotionally congruent. We call it the coherence pulse. And it's a 90-second practice that realigns your identity signal to match your chosen timeline. Here's how it works. You wake up before you reach your phone, before you scroll, before you consume the past through messages or headlines. You sit, eyes open or closed, doesn't matter. What matters is this. You transmit before you receive. Take a deep breath in. On the exhale, imagine your chest expanding not just with air, but with signal. You're not just breathing, you're sending. Now choose 3 words, not affirmations, but frequencies you want to live from, not things you want to have, but states you choose to be. For example, certain, open, magnetic, or peaceful, worthy, complete. Whisper them, feel them, let your body match them. Then imagine those frequencies radiating outward like a pulse. Not in a begging way, not in a hopeful way, in a knowing way. You're not asking, you're not convincing. You're simply stating, this is who I am today. This is the signal I'm sending. This is the version of me the field will meet. And here's where the shift happens. Most people finish a ritual and go back to being their old self. They perform alignment and then default to contraction. But with this pulse, you anchor a new identity before the world tells you who you are. You set the tone. You transmit the code. And what follows is subtle but real. Your posture changes. Your breath slows. Your decisions become clearer. You say no without guilt. You say yes without fear, because you're not responding to the old field anymore, the one built by your past frequency. You're now walking in a field that you created moment by moment, and you didn't chase it. You became the signal it couldn't ignore. That's the real magic. So, here's your invitation. Do this for 7 days every morning. Before anyone else's energy touches yours, let this be your broadcast. And to anchor it even deeper, right now, right here, let's mark this moment together. Let your future self know the signal has changed. Comment below, I am the signal. Not because you're trying to manifest faster, but because you finally understand the field never needed your effort. It needed your coherence. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when you begin to live from that coherence throughout the day. We'll show you how to stay aligned in real-world moments, conversations, decisions, doubts, and distractions. Not by fighting them, but by becoming immune to their frequency. Because when you stop chasing, you start collapsing timelines. So you've transmitted the signal. You've pulsed the field with coherence. And for a moment, maybe 5 minutes, maybe an hour, everything feels lighter, clearer, synced. But then something happens. A message triggers doubt. A delay tempts anxiety. An old situation once again pulls you back into the self you've already decided to outgrow. This is the real test, not of willpower, but of energetic stability. Because the quantum field doesn't test you to punish you. It reflects you to show you where the broadcast is breaking down. And this is where most people unconsciously collapse back into their old timeline. Not because they failed, but because they didn't anchor their frequency deep enough to hold through resistance. But what if holding it didn't require force? What if alignment was less about discipline and more about remembrance? Because the truth is, you don't need to fight old patterns. You just need to become more consistent in the signal of the new self. Let's talk about how your frequency is maintained through small silent agreements you make with yourself throughout the day. Micro decisions, subtle responses, emotional signatures. Most people think manifestation is about the big shifts, quantum leaps, awakenings, breakthroughs. But in reality, timelines shift when your tiny choices stop contradicting your new identity. For example, you receive a message that normally would cause you to contract. The old self would overthink, worry, or try to fix something fast. But instead, you pause, you take a breath, you smile, you remember, I am the signal. That pause is not passive. It's quantum recalibration. It tells the field, I no longer react from my history. I now respond from my alignment. Another moment, you're tempted to rush, to control, to chase, but you interrupt the pattern. You ask, would the version of me who has already received this feel this urgency? And if the answer is no, you embody that no. You slow down. You trust the pulse. You transmit instead of grab. These moments stack. They form a new energetic posture. And posture is power. Because posture tells the field, I am safe enough to allow. I am certain enough to not prove. I am already what I've been trying to become. And that's when timelines accelerate. Now, let's add one more layer. To maintain coherence throughout the day, your environment must become a mirror of your frequency, not a test of it. That doesn't mean isolating yourself or avoiding contrast. It means curating the spaces, people, and inputs that reinforce your chosen state. Ask yourself, What music supports the version of me I'm embodying? What scent? What texture? What light reminds me I am safe in the now? Who are the 3 people in my orbit that speak to the future me, not the past one? Even more subtle, what thoughts will I no longer entertain? Not because they're bad, but because they no longer belong to the signal. This is energetic hygiene. It's frequency stewardship. It's not obsessive. It's intentional. And if you ever feel yourself slipping, you return to the breath, not to calm down, but to broadcast. You say your 3 words. You pulse again. You become the broadcaster again. Because here's the truth. You're not trying to stay in a high vibration. You're practicing being unavailable for anything else. And over time, it's no longer a practice. It's your baseline. You become emotionally immune to chaos. Not numb, but anchored. Not robotic, but sovereign. And the field starts bending. It organizes. It arranges. It delivers. Not because you push harder, but because you stayed still when you used to flinch. You stayed open when you used to brace. You stayed certain when you used to question. That's what changes timelines. In the final part, we'll bring this full circle. You'll see how surrender is not weakness. It's the final phase of transmission. You'll learn the paradox of effortless manifestation and why once you stop needing the result, it starts needing you. And now we arrive at the final truth. The moment when all the techniques, rituals, and alignments dissolve into something quieter, something simpler, something more powerful than anything you could have forced or performed. Because manifestation at the quantum level doesn't happen when you perfect the practice. It happens when you forget the need for the outcome, when your frequency becomes so whole, so magnetic, so internally aligned that the field has no choice but to match you not as reward but as reflection. This is where surrender begins, and not the kind of surrender people misunderstand where you give up, lower your standards, or let go out of exhaustion. No, real surrender is a vibrational decision. It's when your being is so congruent with your intention that you no longer monitor the timeline. You no longer scan the field for results. You no longer beg the universe to prove it's listening, because you're no longer separate from what you've asked for. Surrender in this space is not giving up. It's giving in to the now. It's leaning back into trust while still walking in precision. It's soft eyes with sharp spirit. It's calm action with zero tension. And here's the irony. It's when you no longer need the thing mind that the thing begins looking for you. Why? Because the field responds to freedom. Not the freedom to escape effort, but the freedom from attachment. When you are no longer energetically tangled in when, how, or why not yet, your frequency becomes clear, potent, inevitable. This is what Neville Goddard called living in the wish fulfilled. Not waiting, not hoping, not chasing, but being now the version of you who doesn't ask for it anymore, because you already are the vibration of it. And in that moment, time collapses. Synchronicities align, doors open, calls come, people remember you, ideas surge, and none of it feels like you did anything because in truth, you didn't. You became. And that's the difference between performance and power, between force and flow, between trying and transmitting. So, as you walk away from this video, I don't want you to add another layer of effort. I want you to subtract the noise. I want you to exhale. I want you to trust that what's meant for you doesn't need convincing. It only needs coherence. Let today be the day you stop using your energy to get somewhere and start using your energy to become someone. The version of you that no longer performs the field, but speaks its language fluently. And when that happens, everything you've ever imagined begins to orbit you, not because you chased it, but because you finally tuned your frequency to the truth. You were it all along. And now, if something stirred in you today, if something clicked, resonated, or helped you remember who you are at your core, then you're already in the shift. And you're not alone. This is not just a video. This is a frequency, a space where science meets soul, and the signal gets stronger together. So if this vibration resonates with yours, subscribe now, not for more content, but because this is a movement and you are part of it.